Hello gamers, this is Dante's Infernal, and today I'm going to be talking about a vampire clan. The vampire clan from Vampire the Masquerade, and that clan is Clan Assamite. Now this rant I'm going to be doing has nothing to do with Wood's video or the Gentleman's Guide video. When I decided I was going to talk about this, I actually hadn't watched their videos, and until just recently prior to actually filming this, because I wanted to see what the YouTube community was talking about, so I'm not just giving the same information. Now I feel that both parties made some good points and told pretty good history on it, but there was this, some things that I wanted to add to. Okay, so why talk about the Assamites? Well, I always kind of had this, I always thought they were kind of a great idea, and looking at them, I could kind of see like this pecking order where humans eat animals, so they're above them, and then vampires feed on humans, and then I see this clan that it seems to they're almost designed to hunt vampires. I mean, that just seems like just that's what evolution kind of like designed them as. Now I know it doesn't really explain it like that in the book, but there's almost like this clan is specifically made to hunt vampires. Even their clan flaw was they become addicted to vampire blood. And I could definitely see other vampires being fearful of this. Now again, this isn't really what happened. If the Gentleman's Guide explains this a lot better. This is just kind of like my interpretation of my first like looking at this clan and to see maybe the design of it. So they appear to almost be like designed to hunt vampires. Now then that could be probably a problem making them player characters, so they made them like these assassins, which is not the greatest thing to make them more playable. If that was what was really going on with White Wolf, is to make them assassins. But that's what happened. They did make these these guys into assassins, and they would take contracts, and their contracts would be it would be really cool. Like it would be based off of like vampire blood. I mean, that's how you would basically pay them, and then they would take this blood and give 10% to their elders, and then pass this along, and then create this this like syrup type stuff that would help lower their generation. And then later on it was basically explained there was much more devious things that were going on with this. So it was like an idea of like the lower generation the vampire was, just the much more hits that he had to do to be able to do this. But then they later on they started coming out with these Assamite sorcerers. They gave them a lot more in depth, and I thought it was a well deserved style of depth to these guys. And then like the revised came out, and man, they just took this and they just kind of they completely changed it. It's like, yeah, they broke them of their curse, and now they're running the countryside, and they're tearing apart other vampires. Their elder had woken up and ended this thing. And as a player and as a storyteller, I just kind of continued on with the second edition of their history. And I would bring it up that yeah, their elder did wake up, but then there was a group of them that didn't really want to, they had their ways set and their new life, and so they continued with their contracts. They were already in the shadows, so it just made them much more easier to stay in the shadows. So that's kind of how I ran that. Then the revised kind of came out, and they brought them back. They kind of almost reversed the time before their elder had waken up and ended this curse. And so they made it so you could have a chance to still kind of play in the modern knights and be like playing them still as assassins. Or you can go, no, the guy woke up and he did in fact end this, and because ideally that was the plot line, that there was much more devious things going on, and they were going to break this curse. This clan was actively trying to break this curse. Now the Gentleman's Guide to Gaming brought up a lot of interesting points, and I would definitely, if you haven't seen that, I would definitely watch, his video on this, and, he gave out some, pretty good history based on this. And right now, I just want to show you, this is Vampire the Requiem, and when they brought this out, they pretty much, they left little tidbits of the Assamites. You could see them in various clans and bloodlines, but they never really brought them back. The closest they ever did was in the 7, where they have a vampire actual clan, not just a bloodline, but an actual clan that is very, very similar to the Assamites. And if you're playing this and you don't have this book, I would definitely recommend. My take on this is, after reading this, they're not as vicious. I mean, the rules aren't as vicious as the Masquerade style. However, they got some pretty nasty stuff in this, and they're actually quite good. But I feel they're even less playable than before. Just due to the actual secret nature of the 7, they seem to be even harder to bring in as player characters. Though, they have nothing really mechanically that's just difficult. It's really just the 7 book. I mean, this is definitely a good book, and when I'm definitely playing this guy is being brought in. I just really love the concept of this. I mean, this is basically a group that they really operate 100% in the shadows, and they don't really control any area, and their members aren't known, but they have very high influence everywhere. And these are really ultimately, out of all the other covenants, these I feel are the ultimate villains to bring in. And you can even really bring them in as player characters, though if you do that, I would kind of recommend everybody in the table being involved in this due to just the knowledge of their secrets. But that's really with that. So where did the idea of the Assamites really come from? And I'm going to tell you it's right here. Now, they didn't actually copy it from this game, from the Assassin's Creed. The Assassin's Creed is based on an actual group back in 1000 AD till 1200, well, like towards the end of 1200 AD, that they were called, this group was called the Hashins. Now, these Hashins, they were trained assassins, almost ninja like, and they were really great with when it came to brainwashing. They would take young adults into their group. I mean, it wouldn't be uncommon for them to have 16-year-olds fighting with them. It wouldn't be uncommon probably even have even less fighting for them, and they would really integrate in their target that they're going after. And they had many types of battles with the Templars, and eventually they were taken out. But there's even still remnants of them even today with Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. I mean, they still take some of their aspects of them, so they're almost existing even today. So their ideas really haven't really gone away. So I don't know, the story that I was told when I was in the military, and I'm not exactly a history buff on this, and the point that was trying to be brought up to me was not on actual events. I'm going to explain the actual point that was being explained to me, but the story that I was basically told was that about the old man in the mountain, when the old man on the mountain died, and the way the story was explained was that he was in fact a real person. In fact, I don't know if history can really confirm that this guy actually existed, But the story that I was told was there was a Templar, a young Templar that was was a few years in the Templar service, and he was mostly in caves doing translating, books into translating to other languages, and or copying or something like that. He was like taking information and putting it onto another book or scrolls or whatever. And so they end up taking this young Templar and another Templar, and so there was three of them. So there was a sergeant who was, and he had two Templars with him. They end up taking this young Templar with them. And so they only actually had two, what it was explained to me, they only had actually two horses. So one of the Templars had to walk, and they would take turns with the other young Templar, and the sergeant always rode on his horse. And so they would go like a few miles, and then they would switch, and so one would be walking and the other two would be slowly ride in their horse. And I don't know what they were trying to, I don't know if history ever knew what they were actually trying to carry, but they were taking some sort of item from one place to another. It must not have been that important because they only sent 3 Templars, and 2 of them were quite young in this. So the young Templar was about ready, the one that I was talking about, and I believe he was supposed to be French, but I'm not really sure. To be honest, when I was listening to the story, there were some details of it I didn't, quite listen into. So I'm going to assume that he's French. Again, if this isn't true, then forgive me. But just for all sake of telling the story, I'm just going to call him the French Templar. So this French Templar, he was about ready to get to the point where he was going to ride the horse. And he had been walking for quite many miles, and it was about ready to be his time to walk on the horse. They get around this hill, and they come down over to this valley, and they're come up with this group of people in robes, and there was probably like a wall of at least 10 young soldiers, fully armed, very, very like dedicated and trained. I mean, once they even came up to them, they just looking at them, they knew just the focus on their eyes, the expression they had an emptiness expression. They were just looking forward. They were standing in in a straight line. They weren't even making eye contact with their enemy. And there was this older man above them with a bow and arrow, and who's basically talking and giving them commands. But this young French Templar, he couldn't understand what they were actually saying, but he can look at the expression on his sergeant's face and tell that there was definitely something wrong. So what he immediately did was he thought that they were going to be attacked, and so he was kind of upset because he was about ready to start riding on his horse. It was about to be his turn, and so he was actually quite tired. But the only person he really thought was a threat was the old man, based on the fact that he had a wall full of people in front of him, of soldiers, and he had like an arrow. He could have pecked them off. So he made a mad dash. He just dashed right through the wall of people, and he tried. The idea was he was trying to go through them, catch them off guard, kill the old man, and then those two that were hopefully still on horseback could come down, and they could just take out these other guys and most likely hit them from behind. So I think that was like the forethought of this. Well, he hits this wall, and they instantly just surrounded him, and they pull out their swords, and based on, he could see that their swords were curved. I don't know exactly how curved they were, if these were just scimitars, or if these were just full blown just I'm sorry, I don't remember the swords, but he realized that these swords were more of a cutting tool. And so based on the fact that he was surrounded, and I got some swords, but they're in my basement, so I'm going to use these, foam pieces of crap to kind of explain. So he devised at the very moment, he devised a plan to attack him. Now, he didn't have a shield with him. All he had was just a dagger and a sword, and, he had armor on. But I guess it wasn't that great of armor because, he was, actually still traveling. So what he did with his sword was he leaned it across his back in an angle. And, he had it kind of high up. And then with his dagger, he stayed really close. And with them completely surrounding him, he then, decided to, keep them up. Because if they tried to hit him, he can kind of block off with his arms and with his body. And then he wouldn't get the major hits. And with the sword going behind him, if they try to slash him behind, they would most likely just hit the sword. And then with his dagger, he would just jab at their throats. And when he hear that ping from his back, he would then swing out his sword, catching anybody in his path. And immediately after he'd done that, he would then put his sword back. And after a while, this tactic really started to work, and he dropped all these kids. And they were, in fact, they were supposedly just kids, but these were well-trained, well-trained fighters. And in fact, the Hashins, the reason why they were called the Hashins is because they would even put themselves in a drug-like state. They would actually put themselves in a drug-like state and, to really help them in the fight and make them even more fearless. And these were very well-trained, organized fighters. And he kind of realized at the moment that these weren't just your average fighters, and he wasn't really taking any precautions. So he's stabbing them, and he's cutting them, and putting the sword back, and eventually he ends up dropping them. So then he immediately charges he ends up dropping all of them, and he immediately charges. I don't know if he took any wounds to him, but I'm assuming that his armor must have, helped him in this case. And he immediately, charges the old man. The old man's got a bow. He, pulls the bow back, shoots it, completely misses. This Templar was charging him, so I guess he completely missed. And so they immediately got into a sword battle. And this young Templar realized that he was facing someone who was very skilled at fighting. So what he didn't think he could actually beat him. So he kind of devised on the fly another sort of a tactic. And basically what happened was, he parried the other man's sword up high, and then brought the sword down, cutting the old man's thumb. At this point, I guess he didn't have like your normal sword guard, but actually cutting off the side and damaging this guy's thumb. The guy then ended up dropping his sword. He turned his back on him, and with his other hand grabbed out a knife. But at this point, the Templar wasn't even going to take any chances. As soon as he turned his back on him, he slashed him across the back and kills the old man. Well, it turns out this old man was supposedly the old man on the mountain. And so after that, and what about the other two Templars? Well, they didn't even get off their horse. They didn't even move off their horse. They just watched this young guy just, go and fight. And so they were so shocked about how, just what he had done, that they actually felt that he was a spy, and there was supposedly an investigation on that he was a spy, and the investigation kind of turned up that no, he just was being very improvised. The reason why he won, and this is why we are being told this story, is the person that's going to survive in battle is the one who can keep his head when everything goes to shit. When everything goes to shit, it's the one who can actually do actual strategy and keep his wits about him. That's the guy who's going to survive. And this is, again, I don't know if this is an actual story or if someone had just made this up, but there was an actual training part of this, and that's what the purpose of it was to be explained to us. And so that's what basically, had been told. Now, there was other questions, well, what happened to this guy? And basically what was told to me was, after he had killed the old man on the mountain, the Hashins were pretty pissed off, and they waited like 40 years, something like 40 or 20 years, and they end up just stabbing the shit out of this guy in the middle of like in a public. I mean, they waited for him, and they used by knife. They waited for until he was unarmed. They waited extraordinarily amount of time, and they planned. Look, so they seem to have planned out just it almost seems like a ridiculous plan. I mean, this guy, I guess, over that time started gaining up ranks. After they realized that he wasn't a spy, I guess this guy actually taught some of the Templars how to fight. They made him like a trainer. He had no real training himself. Again, the reason why he was supposedly so proficient at what he did at the moment is that he just stayed calm during when all the shit hit the fan, and that's why this Templar was able to, fight all these, and he was able to generate strategy. A lot of these strategies he generated right in, he improvised right on the spot. Looking at these swords, he can tell that these swords weren't, these were not a thrusting sword, this was a chopping sword, and therefore, he stayed up close to these people. And, not when you had the ropes, he could see, he didn't know what was under the ropes, so he, every attack that he went for was to the throat. And that was his primary attack, was on, with his knife. And then with the sword, he used that more to protect his rear, because he knew that he was going to be attacked from the rear. So he used that to protect his rear. Now, when he came to fighting the old man, he realized he couldn't beat him, so he went after his thumb to obviously, remove his weapon. So it wasn't so much that this guy was just, just an absolute badass. It's more he just, he just stayed calm, and that was what they were trying to explain to us in the Marines. That, that staying calmness is what's going to get you not only to survive but actually win. Because when shit just hits the fan, people are just, they're just doing what comes natural. So if those Hashins had been more thought in their attack, or if they had been older, because supposedly these were like 16-year-old kids, they wouldn't have been just striking. They would maybe have tried to stab, or they would have probably tried to grapple, and then just chop his head off. But they didn't do that. They just took the most basic attack, just the basic slash, and he was able to just defend them off. So the Hashins waited an extraordinary amount of time. They waited for this guy to actually pick up rank in the Templars before they made their kill. And they did it right in the center of town, and they had one guy, and I don't know if this, they had, supposedly, I don't know, I guess maybe they had infiltrated, this, maybe it was someone that this, Templar had known all these years, and then just, he was given the order, and he stabbed the shit out of him right in the middle of the city. And then that really gave a lot of the reputation of what these guys were like. There was a serious amount of fear, and so you can definitely see, these style of tactics that when White Wolf was, in fact, developing them, with the Oskay, with the celerity. Then they of course, they give them their own discipline, the Quintus. Now, out of all the disciplines, I really feel that the Quintus is a lot of hype, but it does have it does seriously have some usefulness to it. But I feel the usefulness works more against a player than an NPC. Now, it's true, if you could, you can slap the shit out of that NPC and drop his physical stats to 0. That, that's a lot easier than dropping his health down. However, that's not the easiest thing to do in the world, and it's really more effective and more scarier when it's being used against a player. And then you could just take away their damn, there you go. You want it back, spend some experience. Or, for the next time you're playing, you got like 2 for stamina instead of your normal 5. So that could be, to an NPC, I mean, who gives a shit? They'll just won't do anything for the next 2 weeks. But for the player who is going to have to do something, that actually becomes kind of frightening. So it's much more, in my opinion, it's not necessarily a player killer discipline, but it's a player fuck you discipline. I mean, it will mess you up if you don't respect it. But then again, if you think that because you got this discipline, you're just going to be the king of the world, that you're going to stomp everybody because this is their discipline and the Assamites are just complete badasses, well then I think you kind of really miss the point. With all their disciplines, the one discipline that I think the Assamites really utilize the most is probably obfuscate. The ability to get up close and personal with their target before they strike. And they will strike at the most opportunity time. They will wait until your back is turned and when there's no one else around, they will wait for the primary opportunity time and they will stab the shit out of you. Now, I've been attacked by many times with Assamites. And whenever I'm attacked by Assamites, the people that are playing them, of course they're not, in some instances they're not actually trying to kill me. These are just really NPCs. But they always kind of come after me wrong. Now, if they always seem to jump out of like the shadows, they're wearing the garb and they jump out of the shadows and they got blood on their hands, they got blood on their knives, and they just do this fury of attack, and when that shit doesn't work, they just blow their damn load because, that shit gets fucking expensive. And then they're just left, just freaking hungry and they can't even feed off my blood, and then I tear the all living holy hell out of them after that. So it can be, I mean, but if they would have used obfuscate, if they would have just like I'll tell you one, I'll be honest, the one discipline I rarely ever give my character is auspex. So if they were to use obfuscate, make them look like my retainer, and then next thing I know, all of a sudden my retainer Byron just smack the shit out of me. I'm like, whoa, holy shit, he just hit the shit out of me. I'd be like, oh, fuck, and I'll be stunned the first round. And then second round, he'll try to hit me. I'm like, I'll try to calm him down. He must be frenzied. He must have damn lost his mind. So the next round, I'm just trying to calm him down. On the third round, I mean, by that time, I'm probably so screwed up. At this point, I'm not even thinking like, holy crap, he's actually an Assamite in disguise. No, I'm thinking this is my retainer. I don't want to hurt him. So if I do hit him, I'm going to be, pulling my punch. And it's not going to be until too late before I realize, like, oh my god, this isn't him. What the hell am I going to do? By that time I'm so screwed up, then I'm in trouble. So it's going to take me about a few rounds before I even realize that a trap was even sprung on me. But that's never really happened. Whenever they come and attack me, maybe a player or an NPC or whatever, they just, they use their obfuscate to, sneak in, get me one-on-one, and then, jump my ass. And by that time, we're on equal playing field. I'm telling you that they're at a disadvantage because when they start using their stuff, it gets expensive, and it can be scary. Believe me, it's their slapping stuff can be scary. But what I found is when you're attacking an Assamite, when they start doing their furies, what you need to do is you just need to focus on damage. That's what you need to focus on. You just need to focus on damage because what they're mostly, first of all, when you look at your stats, there's a few stats that you really, when you know you got Assamites, and I've had many Assamites come after me, the first things that I do is I try to get all my physical stats at least at 4. I don't necessarily need it at 5, but I at least get it at 4. I make sure it's damn equal too. So that way, when that Assamite attacks me, he ain't just, dropping my strength to 0 because I got strength at 2, he's looking at it, and if he sees I got, or if he just figures I got, my strength and dexterity and stamina are all equal, he's gonna attack that stamina because he thinks he's gonna have an advantage over that. So he's gonna hit that stamina, and the next thing I'll have is I'll just have, I'll try to get, straight from character creation, I'll try to get my willpower up to 10. Because one, it's cheap to do from character creation. It's only costs 1 freaking point. So I try to get my willpower up to 10. That's going to definitely help me in this situation. So, he'll try to smack me down. And at this point, as he's trying to smack me down, make sure you got some freaking, if you think you got an Assamite on you, if you're having a bunch of Assamites, what I suggest is have 2 sawed-off shotguns with you at all times. And when you pull out that thing, that double barrel shotgun, and that storyteller looks at you and you're using both barrels, you go, hell no. Hell no. I mean, because I think the way both, double barrel shotgun would work is, the normal shotgun's doing like 8. It's either like 8 or 7. I think it's 8. And if it's like when you use the second barrel, I think it adds it, maybe to 9 or something like that. So it really ain't worth using both barrels. But you use that, that point blank to the face, 8, and then he slaps you down again, and then you use that other barrel, and he slaps you down again, and then you switch that gun around in your hand, you pull that other one on, and when he hits you down 3 or 4 times, and you shoot him in the face 4 or 5 times, what's going to end up happening is while he's hitting you, that's not doing damage. Now he's just setting you up. So as he's hitting you, he's expecting, after he gets done hitting you, then his next round he's gonna, take out those damn knives, and he's gonna stab the shit out of you, or he's gonna pull out a gun himself, or he's gonna, use some martial arts on you, and you ain't gonna have shit to soak. But by that time, you've already shot him 4 times in the face with a sawed-off shotgun. At that point, he ain't got much health left, and he ain't trying to screw around. So he's either running, or by that time, he's most likely dead. So that's how I deal with that. Then you spend your time, staying out of combat and, hiding a little more, and you just walked over that, that Assamite. So what the next thing is, well, what if he pulls out those damn knives, those aggravated? Yeah, those can be nasty. Believe me, so, combining that celerity with those aggravated knives can be a bit nasty, but it's not anywhere near nasty than if like Protons, if he had claws. I mean, that would be just, the claws, in my opinion, are just even more scarier. Plus, most of the time when they use it, they put it on a knife, and the knives don't do a whole lot of damage to begin with. It would be a little bit different if you put that shit on a sword, but what I've experienced, I found, is players and storytellers will put that stuff on knives. So, you got often low damage, and sometimes they don't really even focus too much off their their strength. They're more focused off of dexterity, so they're not rolling a whole lot of damage against you anyway. So hopefully you got some fortitude with you, you can protect them. But again, that shit gets expensive. That can be expensive, and now with the new rules for celerity, that's even more damn expensive. By the time they're done with you, they just blew their damn load on you, and they ain't got much left, and now they're just hungry. And guess what? They can't even feed off you. I mean, at least when you're hungry, you can grab them and you can, tear into them. They can't even feed off you. I remember I was showing my brother, because he was really thinking about doing the Assamite, so I wanted to show him how the combat works. So we're doing a little mock combat, and he was actually doing pretty good. And so I wanted to, raise it up on him. And so I'm fighting him, and then all of a sudden I realize, oh man, I'm low on blood. So I grab him, I bite into him, and then I realize, like, oh crap, I forgot of their weakness. It's something, and I found it even as a player. Players will sometimes forget that crap. They'll waste their round grappling because they're like, oh crap, I got no more blood. All right, well, I'm going to be grappling, and then next thing you know, you just got this smile on your face, like, all right, I'm not even going to resist. You can freaking grapple me, and they bite into you. I've had that happen. I've had people like Assamites actually grapple my ass and try to bite, and they're like, oh, crap, I forgot about that. I mean, because you sometimes forget about it. It's this the way the game is played, and so really, I don't. While I respect the clan, I don't exactly fear them. Now, I'll tell you what, I've taken on things one-on-one, and one of the scariest things I've ever had to take on was a Giovanni. Now, that was freaking scary. I remember that thing ripped my damn soul out, and I had to spend like some sort of round to get back in my body. When I did, then I, laid the smackdown on that. So when it comes to like people trying to create assassins, even as a storyteller, I was like, are you sure you want to do it as an Assamite? Because, geez, when it comes to like the assassins, you really want to, as a player, do you really want to pick as an Assamite? I mean, you could be a Giovanni Button Man, just be an assassin, and that'd be the scariest shit. Forget about Oscape, just having the ability to, like, use the dead. I mean, just imagine it. You kill somebody, and now you can get information from them. You don't even need to interrogate them. You kill their ass, and you'll, pull their soul out, and then you'll force them to tell you what you want to know. I mean, that's from some scary shit. So, then another thing would be, assassin, Ravenos. I mean, that would be some pretty scary stuff. I mean, really, the Ravenos, their quintus, excuse me, their chemistry. I believe that's how you pronounce it, chemistry. Their chemistry, in my opinion, is a lot more frightening than the Assamite's quintus. You know, with the chemistry, basically what you're doing is you're giving the player the ability to be the storyteller. That's really the essence of what quintus is. You can completely change the entire environment, and you can, if you do it right, you can really. Now I've seen people use quintus and they use it poorly, and they get killed using poorly. I mean, you use quintus poorly, you're gonna get killed because you're wasting a damn round on some stupid stuff. Like I've seen someone like create fire, you know, to make a wall of fire to a frenzied vampire, and that frenzied vampire didn't even give a shit. He just ran right through it and killed that character right there. Just freaking killed him. I mean, that's doing it some, you know, some stupid stuff. But, you know, you could completely change the environment. You know, you can make it so the person that he thinks he's attacking is, you know, really his friend. So you just change the way you look over to here. And, I mean, you can completely change the environment to where, you know, it would make the hit much more easier. But I'm telling you, celerity, when I'm sorry, not celerity, but what the chemistry, when it's not as effective when a player is doing it versus when a storyteller is doing it. When a storyteller is doing it, you got no freaking idea that it's even happening if he does it right. When the player is doing it, you know, everybody in the damn table knows that it's not real. They're just waiting for their opportunity where they can make some sort of willpower roll or activate their aspects. So it's not, you know, the whole thing with the metagaming. I mean, it really hurts the chemistry. But when the storyteller is doing it, I mean, it could be just damn right, just freaking scary. So, you know, I'm telling you what, if you player, I've never actually made an assassin, an Assamite, but I have made assassins, and you know, there's another aspect of the Assamites, and that is the clan is pretty restrictive. And so basically what happens is the storyteller controls, I mean, freaking everything with this hit. The storyteller controls the hit that you're going to be getting. So he's generated this complete hit. He then controls, like, you know, I mean, most likely you're going to, you know, say yes, but you have the option of not taking it. But chances are you're gonna, if the storyteller, you know, brings up the hit to you, okay, you'll take it. He controls the whole environment of it. So, and then when you do something wrong, I mean, he's got the entire clan, and the clan is pretty, you know, nicely fit. I mean, it's much like when they're pretty tightly fit. In some ways, they're not as tight fit as maybe like the Tremors, but they are pretty tight. And if you don't do something right, these Assamite elders are going to come down and they will smack the shit out of you. And what's scary about that, they don't even have to kill you. Their quintus, this is where the quintus comes in. I mean, their quintus comes in, it's like, okay, you want to listen to it? Alright, now you're going to be doing the story with like 1 stamina. I mean, they don't have to kill you. They can just fuck with you, and that's where, and that's where the quintus really comes in with the player. They do not have to kill. There was an issue where we had a player was playing an Assamite, and he was playing a Sabbat Assamite. We were all playing like Sabbat for a little bit, and he was playing a Sabbat Assamite, and the storyteller for some reason brought these 3 Assamites in, and he wanted the Assamite to go to Japan. He wanted the Japan to be the base of operation for this player's Assamite. And the player was like, nah, I don't want to leave Japan. He didn't understand why the storyteller was sending him away. And I actually have no idea why. It never really came up. You know, he never left. He never was forced. I mean, he was forced to, but he didn't leave. Well, just prior to this, probably about a month prior to this, this Assamite, the character was actually the player had made Simon Phoenix. Now, Simon Phoenix was the villain from Demolition Man, and the player was pretty inspired by that, and he wanted to make this character, and he actually had designed the character as a Bruja. Well, the storyteller was like, hey, you should, you know, design him as, you know, an Assamite. He convinced the player to do that. So the player agreed to make him as an Assamite. And there was one thing what this player had was his office. He had this really decked out office, and I came in, and he pulls out of his office. He hits this button, and this 50 caliber machine gun comes out of his office, and he threatens to shoot me with this damn thing, and I'm staring at this 50 caliber machine gun, and he puts it away, and kind of chucks it up, and he's like, if I screw with him, he's gonna just and I was like, ha, ha, ha. And then then when he wasn't looking, and when things changed, and when he left, I had then went into his office, and he actually wasn't playing at the time, and the storyteller made me, do a bunch of rolls because I was actually screwing around with his stuff. But I was like, I didn't like it how he just pulled out a 50 caliber machine gun. So I get into his office and I unscrew all that shit, and I unscrewed the 50 caliber and I broke off the chain. And then I was like, this may not be enough. And then, again, this player wasn't playing. I had to do all these type of stealth rolls in order for the storyteller to even let me mess with this stuff. Simon Phoenix stuff. So then I was like, what? Just watching how this character plays, just knowing this character, I got this strange feeling he's got a Desert Eagle taped under his desk. And I told the storyteller, it's either in a holster. I don't know how he's got it in there, but I'm thinking it's maybe like duct tape under his desk. And so I'm going to look under his desk. If he's got a Desert Eagle under there, I'm pulling out the bullets, and I'm barely put in the clip, so when he pulls it out, the clip just drops with an empty shell. But if he's got an Uzi on there, then forget it. I didn't find it. If he's got like a shotgun in the drawer, I didn't find it. I just got a feeling he's got like a Desert Eagle, 50 caliber Desert Eagle under his desk. And so this storyteller was like, all right, and so he let me do it. Well, he set him up the next week, so that he was doing like this drug deal, and the player realized that there was something wrong with this drug deal, and they were outside their place, and they're kind of driving into their building, and the idea was that the storyteller was gonna, this drug deal was gonna go wrong, and it was gonna force him. They were gonna be up in the office, it was gonna force him to pull out that gun. It was gonna break down. These were just humans, and it was gonna force him to break down, and like the stuff that I had done, he was going to find out in a controlled environment. Well, this player started realizing there was something going on with this drug deal. So even before he even got to his base, he like jumped out of the damn car. He's like, there's something not right here. He jumps out of the damn car, just takes off running into the building. Then his men come out and they gun the shit out of these drug dealers. And so, then everyone just forgot. Everyone just forgot about what I had done to his office, and we went on for a few months. Maybe we went on almost for a month. It was about a month before like these Assamites, these 30 Assamites comes in, and they're like, tell them, hey, we want you to go to Japan. That's gonna be your new base of operation. You're leaving the city. Japan's gonna be your new base of operation. The player was then like, he looks at the storyteller, why are you moving? Like, why are you moving to Japan? No, I'm not going to Japan. I'm not listening to you. And he's like, well, no, we're your elders, we're the Black Hand, you're gonna go to Japan. And so the player was like, no, screw that. He's like, I'm pulling out that 50 caliber. And the storyteller's like, all right, you pull out the 50 caliber. And I was like, no. And I kind of, you just motioned to the storyteller, and the storyteller was like, oh crap, I forgot. Everyone basically had forgotten. And another player at this point was just laughing his ass off. And he didn't even know what the hell he was laughing at. But he was just laughing. And it made the Simon Phoenix player thinking that, okay, he's laughing, what'd he do? And so he's thinking that the other player, messed with his stuff. So the storyteller explains, okay, you're and this 50 caliber kind of swings out from underneath his desk. It kind of swings out. So he has it so it swings out and then smashes the freaking desk off the side of him. It's all in pieces, and the player's like, what the F? And then he's just panicking. He's like, oh my god, I'm grabbing my 50 caliber Desert Eagle from under my desk. And the storyteller's like, wait. And he's like, no, I've got it. He points it on his character sheet. See, I've got a 50 caliber. It's taped under my desk. It's got it taped. And I'm just like, oh my god. Oh crap. Really? And he's just like, yeah, I got it taped under my desk. He would do that. He would do that. He's never brought this damn thing up before. And so he's worried that the storyteller is not going to let him do it. So he's like trying to convince him, yes, it's taped under my desk. It is taped under my desk. I'm like, you sure you don't got something in your drawer or something? Like, no, it's taped under my desk. All right. So he's like, okay, you pull the 50 caliber underneath and the bullet. The shell just drops. And these three, like, you know, black and Assamites are staring at him like, what the, you know, they're like embarrassed. They're like, what the hell? And he just stand, and this player is just like, oh crap. And they smacked the shit out of him. They smacked him down. They used their quintus and they smacked the shit out of him. They didn't kill him because they didn't even know what was going on. They're just standing here and his shit is just falling apart. And he's just looking like a dumbass and standing from him. So yeah, they used their quintus. They smacked him down. And then this whole Japan thing just never went through. I don't know. They just like, okay, fine, you're not going to Japan, but you know, they actually took some permanent points of, and this is back in when you could do permanent stamina rating. They actually took some permanent ratings off him. They all three of them were just, you know, they're just laying the smackdown on him, and they're just screwing him up. And so, you know, so that was like probably one of the, that wasn't the first time that someone had brought in an Assamite, but that was where I was starting to like, okay, I could really now see where this quintus really comes in. It's really not for, I mean, it gets nasty when you use it against an NPC and you drop them down to 0, but if they have a chance to walk away from the stuff, it's not that effective. I mean, it really gets scary when it's used on your player character, and now you have to spend experience to get that shit back up. Or if now you got to actually run a freaking story, because this stuff is like, you know, it's going to be lasting for freaking weeks. So that can get pretty nasty. Now with the aggravated damage, again, I mean, that's bad too, but you know, the average laying that blooding on the knife, but it's really no more, you know, devastating than, you know, like if you were to pull claws. Some of the other things they got. Well, I do like the thing where they can make the room silent. Well, I believe it doesn't actually make the room silent, but it keeps sound within that area. So then that can get pretty cool. What I would recommend with that is, you know, doing a sniper perch. You know, get your sniper rifle out, do that thing, and then you can fire it, and it's going to keep the sound within the room. So then that would be a great tool to use, and it would also be just a great tool to keep things one-on-one. So if you know, do that thing where in the office you don't have to worry about guys coming in because no one's hearing this damn crap anyways. So then I do like how that gets on there. But then they get into like where they pretty much, and I think they still do this. They get into this thing where they actually just like puke out blood. And to be honest, I have never seen a player or a storyteller or really anything use that ability. It just seems really awkward. You know, I would only even think to use it if, you know, if you tie one of them up and you're trying to get information from them, and then they're like, you know, they're trying to get you to whisper that they're going to whisper in your ear, and then you puke on their face. You know, that whole acid stuff, honestly, I don't really care for. And I almost don't think there's as big of a use for it, especially when there are other things that they have that could be quite useful. It's just, my feelings is more weird than anything else, and I kind of wish they had something else along with that. So again, I think their biggest tool is really the oscillate. I hope I really explained that to you, that I mean, when you're using that aspect, especially in a player, they won't even know what the hell is going on. Especially if you're, you know, storytelling, then they really don't know what the hell's going on. If you keep that damn oscillate up and not necessarily use it to hide in the shadows, but to change the way you look, then you can really get up close to them. Because what's going to end up happening is you turn them into their favorite NPCs. You know, their favorite retainers. They're not going to want to kill them. They're going to hold their punches back, and then when they're going to realize, like, oh crap, you know, this guy's going to take me down, it's really too late by then. I really think that oscillate really is their key discipline that can be really scary, and that's, you know, that's the one that if I were to make and Assamite. That's the one that I would really focus on, is on that obfuscate. Now, obviously, the celerity could really come useful too. I mean, that's going to get into the combat aspect of it, but that obfuscate's where it's really going to get you up there, and it also is what's going to get you out of the building, because you don't want to have to take on everything. You know, it's so much better to sneak in without anyone knowing than sneak out without leaving even a trace. But you have to realize too that most of the time when you're getting these contracts, these vampires aren't hiring you to kill like a human. They're hiring you to kill something pretty powerful, maybe a mage or another vampire. Most likely it's going to be another vampire. Now, one of the issues, one of the things, the little tricks that another player and even the storyteller would use when they would do this is, when they do get their target, they would stake them, take them to another location, and drain them of their blood. Not necessarily through from their fangs, but through, I don't know, some sort of, I don't know what the hell they use. It was some sort of portable vacuum cleaner or something, but they would drain them from the blood, and they would use that too to turn in for their contracts. I don't know if that's something exactly, should be allowed, but it was, it was something that the storyteller was really endorsing. In fact, was even doing himself with his NPCs. But, if your storyteller would allow you to do that, not going to come down and smackdown on, bring the smackdown on you, because that's really what, this tight-knit clan would do if you, piss them off. They would come down, they would smackdown, lay the smackdown on you, and they wouldn't necessarily, oh wow, that kind of dropped, a little computer piece dropped, and that wouldn't necessarily kill you, but they don't necessarily have to kill you. They can just, just prove your point to you, and that's part of the reason why I never, when making it an assassin, I never wanted to use an actual Assamite. I mean, there's so many other possibilities when it comes to the vampires that you can use. I mean, in my opinion, a bourgeois assassin would be pretty freaking scary. I mean, just with their combat disciplines, that could be pretty nasty. Nassar 2 would be pretty nasty. I mean, they got that obfuscate as well. The Ravnos would be, pretty severe. Even with the amulism they can use to find their target, get information. That would be, and they wouldn't necessarily have, and in that instance, they wouldn't necessarily have the clan coming down on you when you're not doing things right. And plus, your targets could be much more easier to do. And plus, I mean, you don't have to necessarily leave the city after you're done. I mean, you can be playing a fairly known vampire and a good chameleon vampire in the city, and being just an assassin. That's what your occupation is. I mean, you could be some sort of a known assassin by the vampires, and you wouldn't have that stigma of being an Assamite, and you wouldn't have that stigma of being independent. You could still be, in Camellia, and that's just, I mean, that's what your freaking job is. I mean, and so now then it's just, brought into the memorial value of what you're doing, and your humanity, trying to keep your humanity going at, but, killing people. So, in some instances, and that's just where I just kind of feel like when a player wants to play an assassin, I'm like, are you really sure that's what you want to do? I mean, it'd be kind of like the Shamir assassin. I mean, that wouldn't be the greatest thing in the world, because Shamir don't like what you're doing. I mean, they're going to be a tightly neck, and they're going to control you. Now, they're not going to really lay the smackdown on you. They don't really have to. They can just simply tell you not to do it. They can use their dominate, and that would just work even more better, in their favor. So, I mean, in some instances where, like, the Chimirs are almost become unplayable, that's really where the Assamites can kind of come in, because of this tightly knit. Now, as a NPC, these are, they're obviously great. They're, I've had multiple of them come after me, and they're, they're great antagonists. They're, great, like, little NPCs that are being brought in. I mean, even in the vampire game, the first vampire computer game, that was like an Assamite that was brought in. And so there is like a real story plot to be, utilized. Now, there was an issue that I have heard that, well, they're just, how do you keep them in the city? Well, again, here's where the thing is. it's all based on, everything they really do is based on the storyteller. Okay, so as a player, you're really focused on the storyteller. Everything that you're going to be doing is going to be really based on what the storyteller tells you. They're going to set up your contracts. They're going to set up what your contracts are like. They're going to, set up the encounters, even set up, even though you might not think they are, they're going to even set up the, the whole fight scene. So everything is going to be really set up. So if you're having an Assamite becoming a problem in your city, well, really, I don't understand why the storyteller doesn't do something about it, because he's really, in most part, he's controlling the entire, this Assamite. Now, he may not be controlling what this Assamite's going to do for its initiative, but everything that in the city is really, and honestly, it is storyteller, approved and, used. So, just some examples of how to keep, an Assamite in the city would be like the Assamite, they could be, in some other country, and this elder Assamite could come up to the player and go, hey, listen, this prince in New York, well, let's do Chicago. New York isn't supposed to have a prince. So this prince in Chicago, well, he saved my life, and I owe him a life boon. Well, the thing is, I'm an Assamite, and I can't just can't abandon my post here. They'll kill me. But you are under me, so you will carry on my life boon. You will go into the city and you will protect this prince, and you will be a good citizen. That will be brought into how this Assamite is brought in, and how he could be, integrated into the party. Now, if that player is very well could go, that's your damn life boon. I don't want to do that. And, if that happens, then, yeah, he's still going. It's like, now you're going, but now this time you're going with only 1 stamina. So he doesn't even have to kill him. I mean, that's just a great way of really trying to bring him in and keeping him in the city. Again, if you're having problems with the Assamite, it's really the storyteller that can, keep this guy in. Everything that's involved in this is in there. Now, if he tries to do that with, if you try to do that with a woodwwad assassin, I mean, yeah, I guess he could bring in, like, an elder, but what's going to end up happening is that elder's going to either kill him or not. I mean, he's not going to be able to just, smack him down, like, give him little love taps. I mean, he's going to end up, there's going to be a serious fight, and eventually, it's just not going to work. So you're much more likely to leave with another assassin because of that knitness that this group has. So, one of the big things that, why I want to talk about the Assamites is this is the clan that I found. Again, I've never really wanted to play an Assamite. I think they're cool. I like them. I like them in my city as storyteller. I like bringing them in. But as a player, I never really felt like actually playing them because I felt there was a lot of hype involved in them. So, but I have heard a lot of players wanting to play in Assamite, and I've heard quite a few storytellers not allowing it. And I never understood why they wouldn't allow it. And the best answer I got was, well, they're killers. Well, what's really most of us are killers anyways. I mean, most of our characters that we're making are going to be in some way killers, but at least you can control that player. And I've even heard the comment, well, I don't want to give them a free pass to play a sadistic killer. They don't have to be sadistic killers. I mean, you actually control every contract that they're going to do. If you don't want them killing women and children, don't give them women and children contracts. Give them, bad people. I mean, you as a storyteller can control everything that they do. If you don't like, and if they're not doing it, then you bring the elders in and you smack them down. I mean, they're gonna do it. That's where their elders are gonna come in. If they're not doing something right, you wait until they screw it up. They screw up a tradition, and then you have them, deal with you. And they don't have to worry about being blood hunt because, they're not going to outrun an Assamite clan, they're not going to run their own Assamite clan, but if they get a blood hunt on the prince, yeah, they could leave the city, but, where the hell are they going to go? So I never really understood why the storyteller was so afraid, why storytellers were so afraid to bring them in. And, I mean, I can't stress this enough, as a storyteller, you can control them. You control them. I mean, the only thing is that they just sound cool. That's really all it is. But if a player is hell-bent, and I've seen this, where players want to make an Assamite, they won't let the storyteller won't let them play it, so then they make an assassin or some sort of killer from another clan, and which they have really no control over, and they have even less control of them. Maybe not necessarily have no control over them, but they just have less in their toolbox to go after this player and to tame him down. But allowing them to play that, I mean, again, if they are running amok, it's really the storyteller that can put them in place, and they have many tools to put them in place. And you don't just have to use the disciplines from 1 to 5. I mean, you could very well bring in some very elder Assamites in to lay the smack down. They got some pretty scary stuff on the higher levels, and which you're gonna, as a storyteller, you can easily bring in, not including that. Hey, guess what? This guy knows some other disciplines, or this guy just is more of a sorcerer and he's got some more shit that you didn't even think of. So I never really understood what was so scary about it. Now, I will say this about when the Assamite tactics, especially as a player. The one thing that always did frighten me, and that I thought was pretty nasty, and I believe this was worn in the first edition book, was the garrote. That thing was freaking scary. Wrapping that thing on them, with that oscape jumping out of shells, getting behind you, snapping that on you. That thing got pretty damn scary. And so, in that instance, yeah, I didn't want to screw around with that. But that's not to say that I couldn't use the garrote with another type of character. I mean, the garrote, it was just a tactic and weapon that was in the assassin little toolbox. And the assassins that I did encounter did, in fact, use those. But thank God they didn't wrap that thing around my damn neck, because then that could really just kill your character right there. But I wanted to started to talk about the Assamites, because that's really, I've seen storytellers say no to the Assamites, but then say yes to like the Tzimisces. And oh my God, are you kidding me? Like that, wow, that can be freaking scary. I mean, you want to talk about something that can run amok. Now that is freaking scary. Now, there are 3 clans that I will not put the Flaw clan enemy with. I will not put clan enemy with. And on top of that list is the clan Tzimisce. That can be freaking scary. The idea that some guy doesn't even, he doesn't even need to be physically more powerful than you, but he'll grab your wards, he'll grab your retainers, he'll grab anything you have and turn them into a freaking monster to come after you. That is something I don't want to really mess with. So I will never put like clan enemy. Now, to say never isn't true. Actually, my last character I did in fact put clan enemy Tzimisce, but I was definitely worried about doing that. The next one is obviously the Assamites. I mean, when you put clan enemy Assamites, expect for these things, the storyteller, to throw these things at you, and that's exactly what happened to me on one of my characters. I kept having these things being thrown at me, and I was taking them out, but definitely it made me much more paranoid, as as my character much more, not in real life, but my character much more paranoid. And the third one would be the Giovannis. Now, here's a clan that, and I always thought the Giovannis had a lot more hype to them than really necessary, because here's a clan that supposedly goes to war with the Camarilla and actually is able to, combat against the Camarilla. Well, yeah, I don't really see how they can, but individually, yeah, the Giovannis can be pretty scary. And when you have the Giovanni clan coming up against you, no, screw that. I'd rather, those 3 clans, I'd rather have a clan enemy with anyone else, then I mean any other clan would actually seem like they would be fighting honorably. And so any of those three clans, I'm not really wanting to, actually have a clan enemy with. But especially, as NPCs. Now, as player characters, that's a little bit different. The Since sometimes players can be much more toned down, and sometimes players can be, a real absolute nightmare. But at least you're at, like, as another player, you're at an equal level, and as a storyteller, you have some level of control and knowing what they're doing. But again, I've seen storytellers say no to Assamites, but then say yes to, like, Tzimisce. I've seen them say yes to, oh crap, just Sabbath characters. I've seen the storytellers say yes to, like, an entire Sabbath sect. One player controlling, like, a whole sect of Sabbath, just, of just combatants, allowing him to do that over, like, an Assamite. And it blows my mind. It's just like, really? I mean, are you that afraid of them? I mean, I definitely see, like, yeah, they can become problem characters, but it doesn't mean that they can't use another clan to be that problem either. It's not necessarily the clan that becomes the problem, because the storyteller is going to be controlling the clan. I mean, you're not giving the player the clan, you're just giving him a person within the clan, and most likely a low-ranking member, probably the lowest of the low-ranking members of that clan. So that's where I'm just like, I don't really see it. But it could be just brought into the fact that not a lot of people in my group has even done that. I've only a few people have actually played an Assamite in my group, and they seem to do all right. They didn't go crazy, but they definitely have this stigma about them that these guys are just cold-blooded killers, and if you allow a player to play cold-blooded killers, that's what they're going to do. They're going to play cold-blooded killers. But guess what? If that's what they want to do, they're going to play a cold-blooded killer no matter what no matter what clan they're going to play. I mean, do you really want them to play a cold-blooded killer of a clan that you can't control, or something that you can? And so there is actually going to be, an honor behind that. And so you could really, you definitely can have much more control on it. So I guess, I mean, it blows my mind every time I see storytellers saying no to the Assamite. Again, I made assassins. I make assassins all the damn time, but Assamite, I'm like, what keeps me from wanting to do that is, like, I just don't want the clan coming down on me the moment I do something wrong, because it's just the close ties that they have within one another. Now, as for the Sabbath, Assamites, the whole Sabbath is much more close. I mean, than within the community. So really, in that instance, it really, I really feel like if you're doing a Sabbath campaign and someone wants to make an Assamite, crap. I mean, I guess there's other things that they could make. I don't know what would be the change of difference. I mean, when we were playing a Assamite, a Sabbath campaign, like we had the storyteller kind of convincing a player to make, an Assamite, over a Bruja. So, in that instance, I don't know really what becomes different, other than I guess we're all expected to play like these cold-blooded killers. Oh, well, geez, I don't know what really more to talk about, but the question, I guess I can't really wrap my head around storytellers not allowing this clan. I mean, there's so many different ways to bring these characters in, and versus just having to make them sheriffs and the scourges. In fact, I've only in one instance have I ever seen a player actually playing a sheriff, but pretty much we've most of the time, most of the players end up like playing some sort of hound or something like that, over just under the sheriff. So, I think I've probably gone on long enough with this rant, and if you, have listened to all this, or, my other long, rants channels that I've done on, I want to thank you. And basically, this is just local Diablo telling you the devil's in the details, and goodbye. Hi gamers! After kind of reviewing my Assamite video before I posted, I thought there was a few things that, a few points that I kind of needed to address. And really the biggest one, the first one, was this video had nothing to do in response to Wood's video. Wood had brought up a few great points, and that is that these are, I think what he was trying to explain, these are not really playable. If you're playing, most likely if you're playing Vampire, most likely you're doing it in a community city. And if you're doing in a Camarilla city, if there's generally, there's politics involved. There's ass kissing. There's scourges going on there. You got the sheriffs. It's a very much a political style game. And if you're not running it like that, it's not that you're doing it wrong, but you are kind of missing out. And the Assamites have a hard time really fitting in to that. One, because of their very tight neck. Two, they can't really drink blood, so blood bonding has no real purpose. Three, their clan is pretty powerful. I mean, you can't really screw over an Assamite. I mean, that's just, they do have one of the more powerful clans. But when it comes to the Assamites, promote just douchebaggeryism from players, well, I guess they could, but listen, douchebags are just going to play douchebags. I mean, that's just the way it's going to be. The Assamites are really no more powerful. The players are really no more powerful than any of the other clans out there. Yeah, you could, in fact, most likely if you're playing Assamite, you're going to want to play, an assassin. But that doesn't necessarily make you, more powerful. And generally, they're by themselves. They don't really have their group with them. I mean, they have the support in the rear, but they don't exactly, you often don't have, like, hordes of them. I mean, they're no more, they're less dangerous than a bourgeois with, with protons. So the idea that this Assamite is going to ruin your game, well, that's just really based on the player. The player is what's going to ruin the game. The Assamite clan isn't going to really ruin it. There's many ways for the storyteller to keep the Assamite in the city. There are many ways for players to play an Assamite and not be a freaking douchebag about it. But again, if it's solely based off of just douchebaggeryism, then they're going to use other means of doing that. They're going to be playing. They could be playing a Malkavian who's more combat oriented and who just doesn't give a shit. I mean, they could be playing a Tzimisce. They could be playing. There's so many other different clans that they could be promoting, and that will really aid their douchebaggeryism. There's nothing really in the Assamite, anywhere in the Assamite, that the tools that they can use that are just going to really just fuck over your game. So the idea that an Assamite's going to just run amok in your game, it really comes down to the storyteller whether or not he's going to really allow that, because there's just things that they do that they need the cooperation of the storyteller. Now, I can be playing a bourgeois and just not give a fuck, and I can just be going off completely on my own, and despite the fact the storyteller is trying to keep me in, that's up to if I want to do it. I mean, I can completely avoid that. With the Assamite, you really need the storyteller's cooperation. You need the storyteller to give you contracts. You need the storyteller to provide what these contracts do. I mean, they provide these hits. It's if you don't want your Assamite to go killing women and children, don't give them freaking contracts that kill women and children. If you don't want to deal with contracts, explain in your city, hey, you know, you could play an Assamite, but there's no one in the city that's going to give you a contract, so you're going to be probably working for humans. So, you know, I mean, there's many different ways of doing that, even completely just ignoring them, because they need the cooperation of the storyteller step by step in order to achieve this. And they're really not that anymore, you know, mechanically they're not any more dangerous than any of the other clans. I mean, there's so many much more combinations that you could do that can just really run amok in your story. So, you know, that's really what I have to say about that. The another point that I wanted to explain, I told you about a story about the death of the old man on the mountain. You know, I was explained to this while I was in the Marines. That we were not. This was not a history lesson, though we do actually do have history lessons. But they were trying to explain a point, and I felt like I did kind of explain that point, but then I started to realize, you know, geez, I don't know if this stuff is actually even true, so I kind of did look it up. Now, the timeline that I was given was the old man on the mountain died in the, I couldn't remember the exact date. In fact, I just looked it up and I still don't even remember it. But he died in the late 19, no, not like 19, but he died in the late 1100s, and that this uh, Templar was murdered in the mid-early 1200s. And so I went to look it up because I didn't even know if this guy was even true. You know, I wasn't even sure if he was just maybe a Robin Hood, if he was just a story. You know, if there was no actual evidence. Well, it turns out that the Old Man Mountain really did existed, and he died in 1100. It was like 1192 or like 97. He did die in that, and it sounded like he did die in battle, but they didn't really have much explanation that he died. Other than, you know, that he was in fact murdered. And it sounded like that he died in battle, and there sounded like there was multiple stories involved in his death. So I don't know exactly where this, you know, Marine, you know, came up with the story. If you read it in a book, if you saw it in a movie, I'm not really sure. And again, I haven't been in the military for over 10 years, so there's certain details that I could have forgotten. So I didn't really find anything that disproved, you know, what the story was told to me, but chances are it's probably not true. You got to understand, too, when I was in boot camp back in '97, there wasn't a lot of war movies out there. And so in boot camp, they showed us a video to explain like different things like the fogs of war and what it's like to be in a wartime situation. And you know what the video that they showed? They showed Aliens. You know, Aliens Part 2. You know, with the Space Marines, that's what they showed. And yes, they would pause it and explain each point how these Marines screwed up. Because you got to understand, like Saving Private Ryan was not really available. A lot of these Vietnam movies, they, you know, had to do with after the Vietnam. They had to do or involving like, you know, their time in boot camp. But there really wasn't a whole lot of movies that, you know, gave extensive you know, just scenes that, you know, until like, you know, even after Saving Private Ryan. So I mean, even that movie, Saving Private Ryan, wasn't even available when I was going through boot camp. So the Marines actually, to show, you know, like just intense battle scenes, they were showing a sci-fi movie fighting aliens. I mean, I was sitting in class like, holy crap, really? I mean, that's all we've got. So, you know, it's very possible that I was just given the wrong information. You know, another point was, well, how did and I think this was brought up, how did the story, you know, come out? You know, the Templars were a secret society. The Hessians were even more secretive. Now, the Hessians, the word assassination, it's my understanding, the word assassination comes from Shakespeare. You know, it's my understanding that he invented the word. But the assassin, the meaning behind assassin came from the Hessian group back in, you know, like 1000 AD to like 1300 AD. This assassin group, these sand ninjas that were fighting the Templars during, the Crusades. That's really where that word assassin came from. Now, I don't really think I did a good enough explanation on sorry, my computer stopped. Okay, so alright, it looks like it's still recording. Okay, so I don't think I really did a good enough explanation on really the history of the Assamites. So if I explain this, I'm sorry, but this is basically what the Assamites were back in the Dark Ages. They were just cold-blooded. They hunted vampires. I mean, their flaw used to be that when they tasted vampire blood, they became addicted to it, and they seeked it out, and they, would hunt these vampires, and they would deliberate the unholy hell out of them. And they became so much a problem that the Chimers put a curse on them. And not everyone got cursed. Some of them just completely abandoned the clan, and then they end up joining the Sabbat. But the ones that stayed with the clan, took this curse to avoid being just completely wiped out. And this curse was that they could never drink vampire blood again. If they even taste it, it's going to damage them. If they, now with the new rules for the 20th edition, they even try to deliberate. If they even try to suck the soul out of the vampire, it will cause, aggravated wounds based on the willpower of their victim. So it's a lot. This is a pretty serious curse. However, the Chimers didn't realize that even with this curse, it really didn't change who they were. They were, they were professional killers, and all that really did was it integrated them in the Dark Knight society as assassins. So not all Assamites are assassins. I mean, there are these, the Assamite sorcerers. There are other forms that these Assamites that they support the Assamite clan, but they generally do. That is what they do. They in fact support the Assamite clan, even the assassins. Now, what they do with this blood is, it was under my impression that starting in the 2nd edition, because in the revised they eliminated this curse, but in the 2nd edition they would take this blood to their holy mountain. They would pay dividends to their elders, and if they accumulated enough blood, it would make this syrup that would help them lower their generation. And that's how they lower their generation, is through killing. That is the means that they conduct. Now in the revised, they broke them of their curse, and they returned them back into the Dark Ages. So when the 20th anniversary came out, and they gave you the option of bringing them back as the assassins, I was really hyped up for that. I thought that was a really great idea. But then that kind of brings to the point. I mean, I would have to say these are the one clan. This is why I'm doing the video on this. This is the one clan that it seems like storytellers don't let you play, and it just blows my mind why. I mean, they're not, when it comes to a player character, they are not the destroy all. I mean, their background may be that of their clan, but there are tactically, mechanically, there are so much more easier means to do this. There are so many more destructive means that you can use. And so the best explanation that I've got is, well, I don't want to promote killers in my game. I mean, then they're just going to kill. I mean, they don't have to do it under the Assamite clan, but plain douchebags are just going to play douchebags. I mean, if that's what's going to happen, if that's the concern, they're going to use other means to achieve this. If they really are hell bent on playing an assassin, they don't have to use the Assamite. The Assamites do not have a patent on being assassins. I mean, they are proficient at it, but they don't have this unholy patent where only they can be assassins. There are other means of doing it, and most of the times that's what players are looking for. They watch like some sort of movie and they're like, hey, I love that character. That's a great character. They might actually watch, you know, the Rock's movie Fast, or like Faster or something like that, and they're like, hey, you know, that assassin in that movie was great, I want to make a character on that. So then they open up their book and they're looking at, you know, what character could they, you know, use to create. And they're like, okay, I want to try the Assamite. They bring it to the storyteller, and the storyteller's like, hell no, you ain't using no damn Assamite. So what's the player gonna do? He's like, all right, I'm gonna make, you know, frickin' Bruja. You know, they don't really care. They're gonna still play that character. And if they do it right, then, you know, if they do it right and they're not destructive, then really isn't the problem. But the problem is, you know, in the end, the players are going to play the characters that they want to play. Now, and, you know, if that's what you're really worried about, if you're really worried about as a GM of them just being these killers, I would allow them to play the Assamite, because then at least you can control every means that they're, you know, are doing. They need pretty much your permission to do anything in your story. They have to have your permission to do anything. So basically, to sum it up, if a douchebag player wants to play an Assamite so they can act like a douchebag and then call it good role-playing, then, you know what, screw it, let them. And then when they get out of line, you smack them down. You smack them down with their Quintus. You take their stats away from them, and then you smack them down with their clan, with their own clan, so they can't really fight back. You smack them down with their own clan, and then you call that good storytelling. You know, so with that, I'm gonna end it here. So if you've been watching this video, thank you. And this is Local Diablo reminding you the devil's in the details. Goodbye.